Imagine your heart pounding, sweat beating on your palms, as if a predator is just behind you. In that split second, your brain screams danger, even if the threat is nothing more than a flickering notification on your phone. What if I told you that the thing you're most terrified of right now might not even exist? Welcome to the hidden battlefield inside your mind, where real threats clash with imagined ones. Stay with me for the next 10 minutes, and you'll discover why a news headline can feel scarier than a bear attack, and how you can reclaim your peace. I remember a night when I was parked in a dimly lit garage, convinced someone was watching me from the shadows. My breath quickened, my muscles tensed, and I felt frozen in place. The reality? It was just my own mind playing tricks, a ghostly echo of an ancient survival system that has outlived the world it was built for. Fear is more than just an uncomfortable feeling. It is an emotion, a survival system, and a social signal all rolled into one. Think of the word fear breaking into three parts: the brain that detects danger, the body that prepares to act, and the crowd that watches and reacts. This triad shapes how we experience and express fear every day. Why does this matter now more than ever? We live in an age of constant alerts, endless news cycles, and social media echo chambers that amplify every whisper of threat. A single headline can travel across the globe in seconds, stirring anxiety in people who are miles away from any real danger. The pandemic reminded us that invisible enemies can dominate our thoughts, turning ordinary spaces into sources of dread. By the end of this video, you'll know the evolutionary roots of fear, how our brains misjudge danger, the social forces that pump it up, and a practical mindset shift to tame the phantom monsters that haunt us. Our ancestors survived by fearing predators, fire, and the unknown. Picture early humans spotting a lion on the horizon. The instant they recognized the threat, a cascade of chemicals surged through their bodies. The fight-or-flight circuit kicked in, releasing adrenaline, widening pupils and sharpening senses. This rapid response was a matter of life or death, a binary decision that left no room for nuance. Evolution favored quick, decisive judgments, safe versus unsafe. If the instinct told you to flee from a snake, you lived to pass on those genes. That same instinct still runs the show today, even when the snake is replaced by a buzzing phone or a sudden news alert. Our nervous system cannot differentiate between a roar in the savannah and a ringtone in the living room. This mismatch is called evolutionary lag. Our bodies are still wired for a world of roaring beasts and raging fires, yet we now navigate digital landscapes filled with emails, stock market crashes, and viral memes. A simple notification sound can trigger the same surge of cortisol that once prepared a hunter to sprint from a charging buffalo. Consider this. If I asked you to rate your fear of a spider versus a cyber attack, which feels higher? Many people find the tiny insect unnerving, while the abstract threat of a hack feels distant, yet it can dominate conversations and headlines. That tension reveals how our primal wiring and modern context collide, creating a landscape where perceived threats often outweigh real ones. Understanding this evolutionary backdrop is the first step toward mastering fear. When you recognize that the alarm bells ringing in your brain are echoing ancient survival scripts, you can begin to question whether the danger is genuine or simply a phantom.
If this is blowing your mind, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep exploring together.
Now, let's dig deeper into the ways our minds misjudge danger. One of the most powerful shortcuts our brain uses is called the availability heuristic. In plain language, the brain measures risk by how easily an example pops into memory. A vivid news story about a plane crash, a shark attack, or a sudden pandemic surge sits front and center in our mental reel, making us overestimate how likely those events are to happen to us. The actual statistical odds of being struck by lightning, for instance, are minuscule compared to the odds of slipping on a wet floor. Yet the thunderstorm headline dominates conversations because it is dramatic and emotionally charged. This mental shortcut saves us cognitive energy, but it also skews our perception of what truly threatens us. Another bias that fuels perceived threat is the negativity bias. Evolution prized the ability to notice danger quickly, so negative information sticks in our memory far longer than positive information.
A single critical comment on a social platform can echo louder than 100 compliments, and that echo amplifies the sense that the world is a hostile place.
When you scroll through a feed filled with angry headlines and angry faces, your brain interprets that as a signal that the environment is unsafe, even if the underlying data shows a steady decline in crime rates and disease prevalence. This mismatch between emotional weight and factual reality is a breeding ground for chronic anxiety. The third piece of the puzzle is the concept of threat imminence. Our nervous system is wired to respond most intensely when danger feels immediate. A distant rumble of thunder may cause a mild startle, but a sudden, sharp alarm tone triggers a full-blown fight-or-flight surge. Modern technology constantly simulates that sense of immediacy. A push notification lights up your phone, a breaking news banner flashes across the screen, a trending hashtag spikes into the top stories. Each of these cues tricks the brain into thinking that something urgent is happening right now, prompting a cascade of stress hormones even if the underlying event is merely a distant policy debate or a speculative market fluctuation. So far, we've explored the internal shortcuts that warp our risk calculations. Let's now turn outward and examine how society amplifies these distortions. The media landscape acts like a megaphone for fear, selectively highlighting the most sensational stories because they attract clicks, shares, and advertising revenue. This commercial incentive creates a feedback loop. The more fear-laden the content, the more engagement it garners, and the more producers are motivated to deliver that same emotional punch. Over time, audiences become conditioned to expect a constant stream of alarming headlines, and the baseline level of anxiety rises accordingly. Social media platforms add another layer of amplification through the echo chamber effect. When you follow like-minded accounts, the algorithm curates content that mirrors your existing beliefs and emotions. If you are already feeling uneasy, the feed will serve you more content that validates that unease, reinforcing the perception that threats are omnipresent. Moreover, the phenomenon of herd behavior, where individuals look to the crowd for cues about how to react, means that a single viral post about a looming danger can snowball into a collective panic. Remember the wave of panic buying that swept grocery aisles during the early days of the pandemic? That was a classic case of social proof turning a rational precaution into an irrational surge. Cultural narratives also shape our fear landscape. Stories of heroic rescue, apocalyptic prophecy, and monstrous villains are woven into literature, movies, and folklore across centuries. These narratives embed archetypal images of danger deep within our collective unconscious. When a modern event triggers a familiar motif, say, a virus likened to a relentless enemy, the brain instantly categorizes it within an age-old script, further intensifying the emotional response. Understanding that these cultural scripts are not immutable truths, but rather learned patterns, gives us the leverage to rewrite them. Having mapped both the internal biases and external amplifiers, we arrive at the most actionable part of our journey: practical strategies to reclaim calm. The first tool is cognitive reappraisal, a mental technique that involves reframing the meaning of a stimulus. Instead of interpreting a sudden news alert as a personal threat, you might view it as an opportunity to stay informed and prepared. By consciously shifting the narrative from "danger is imminent" to "I have the resources to respond calmly," you dampen the surge of stress hormones and engage the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for rational analysis. Second, exposure therapy, whether literal or imagined, helps desensitize the fear response. If you feel a knot in your stomach at the thought of public speaking, deliberately practicing short speeches in a low-stakes environment can gradually lower the physiological alarm. The same principle applies to abstract fears. Visualizing a scenario repeatedly while maintaining a relaxed breathing pattern trains the brain to recognize that the situation does not always demand a fight-or-flight reaction. Over time, the neural pathways that once lit up at the slightest hint of the feared stimulus become quieter. Mindfulness meditation offers a third, complementary avenue. By anchoring attention on the breath, bodily sensations, or a simple mantra, you create a mental pause that interrupts the automatic cascade of fear. Studies have shown that consistent mindfulness practice reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear hub, and strengthens connectivity with the regions that regulate emotion. Even a brief 2-minute pause before reacting to a stressful email can shift the response from impulsive to measured. A fourth strategy involves information hygiene. Just as you would filter the food you eat, you can filter the information you consume. Set specific times to check news updates, rather than allowing a constant stream to dictate your emotional state. Curate your social feeds to include a balance of uplifting, factual content alongside necessary alerts. When you encounter a sensational headline, pause and ask yourself, what is the source? What evidence supports this claim? How does this directly affect me? This simple checklist creates a mental buffer that reduces the likelihood of an unfiltered fear response. Finally, building a supportive community acts as a powerful antidote to the isolation that fear often breeds.
Sharing concerns with trusted friends, family, or a professional creates a reality check and provides perspective that you might miss when stuck in a spiral of worry. Collective coping mechanisms like group meditation sessions, hobby clubs, or volunteer projects reinforce a sense of agency and remind you that you are not alone in navigating uncertainty.
Before we wrap up, let's pause and reflect on what we've uncovered together. We started by tracing fear back to our ancestral need to dodge predators. Then we examined how the brain's quick decision circuitry can misfire in the age of digital alerts. We explored the social accelerators that turn isolated worries into collective panic, and we equipped you with concrete practices to quiet the inner alarm and regain a sense of control. The takeaway is simple yet profound. Fear is not a fixed enemy but a mutable signal, and by learning its language you can choose whether to heed it or let it pass.
Now I'd love to hear from you. What is one fear that you've discovered is more imagined than real? And which technique do you think will help you tame it?
Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Reading your stories always sparks new ideas for future episodes.
If you found this deep dive useful, give it a thumbs up so the algorithm knows to bring more of this content your way.
And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next exploration into the hidden forces shaping our minds.